Have you ever looked at someone for 10 seconds and decided you knew everything about them? I did. The worn hoodie, the tired eyes, the little girl asking too many questions. I thought I knew exactly who Robert Sullivan was. 37,000 feet later, I learned I didn't know anything at all. The memory starts in fragments, the way trauma always does. First comes the turbulence, violent enough to rip oxygen masks from their housings. Then the screaming, raw and animal, the kind that scrapes away every polite veneer we wear in public. My hands white-knuckled on the armrest, laptop somewhere on the floor spilling coffee into the first-class carpet. And through it all, cutting through the chaos like a knife through silk, I see him. The man in the gray hoodie walking toward the cockpit with his shoulders squared, moving like someone who's done this before. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, it's 2 hours earlier, and I'm standing at Gate C-14 in Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, and I still believe I'm the most important person in this terminal. The gate agent's voice cuts through the white noise of delayed travelers and crying children. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 2247 to Boston. Logan will begin boarding in approximately 20 minutes. We apologize for the continued delay. A collective groan moves through the waiting area. I don't join them. Groaning is for people who have time to waste on pointless emotional displays. Instead, I press my phone tighter against my ear and let my voice drop into the temperature range that makes junior associates check their resumes. Stephen, if Mercer's legal team doesn't send the revised indemnification language within the next 3 hours, we're walking from this entire $850 million acquisition. On the other end, Stephen Blake, my COO for the past 6 years, knows better than to argue when I use that tone. The revised language will be on your laptop by the time you land in Boston. See that you do. I end the call without waiting for his goodbye. My laptop sits open on the seat beside my Hermes carry-on, displaying the Mercer term sheet with its poison pill buried in clause 7.3. The language is clear. If Winters Capital executes a reduction in force of 60 to 120 employees within the first 18 months post-acquisition, all legal liability for wrongful termination claims falls on Winters Capital. Potential exposure, $8 to $12 million. I've highlighted the clause in red and added a note. Unacceptable. Push back hard. My phone buzzes with an email notification. The contact name reads Mom, accompanied by a photo I haven't updated in 5 years. The subject line, Sweetheart, it's been 9 months. I swipe delete without opening it. I'll call her after the Mercer deal closes. After the board meeting. After. Always after. The thing about after is that it never actually arrives, but acknowledging that would require the kind of self-examination I stopped indulging in somewhere around my second divorce. Across the gate area, a man in a faded gray hoodie sits with his daughter. The fabric is worn soft enough that I can see the USMC lettering starting to blur. Jeans with honest wear patterns at the knees, military surplus duffel bag resting against his leg. His daughter sits cross-legged on the airport carpet beside him, coloring in a spiral-bound notebook with Dollar Tree markers. She can't be older than 7, all dark hair and serious concentration, tongue poking out slightly between her teeth. The man leans over to look at whatever she's drawing. What you drawing, sweetheart? The little girl doesn't look up. Airplane. But I'm making the wings go up instead of flat. Why up? To catch more sky. Like hands, Daddy. He considers this with the gravity of someone who takes his daughter's ideas seriously. Best engineers think different, kiddo. You might be onto something. The girl beams at this validation, and something about the exchange makes my jaw tighten. It's the casual intimacy of it, the way he's giving her his full attention despite looking like he hasn't slept in 30 hours. I've never had that. Not with either of my ex-husbands, both of whom I divorced because they wanted more of my time than I was willing to give. Certainly not with the 1,800 employees across my portfolio companies who see me as a quarterly earnings report with legs. The man's phone buzzes. He glances at the screen, and his jaw tightens. His thumbs move over the screen with deliberate care. Already handled. Don't worry. He sends the message and slips the phone back into his pocket, then returns his attention to his daughter as if nothing happened. But I saw the lie. I recognize it because I'm fluent in the language of deception we use to keep people from seeing how close to the edge we're living. The girl stands up without warning and walks directly toward me with the confidence that suggests she hasn't yet learned that strangers are supposed to be approached with caution. Her father is reading something on his phone, distracted enough that he doesn't notice her migration. I've placed my Hermes bag on the empty chair next to me, the universal signal for don't even think about sitting here. The bag cost $4,000 and serves double duty as both a fashion statement and a territorial marker. The girl looks at the bag, then at me, then back at the bag. "Excuse me, miss?" I continue typing, a deliberate signal that I'm busy and unavailable. "Excuse me?" The second attempt is louder, impossible to ignore. I look up. "What? Can I sit here? I want to show you something. This seat is occupied." She's already moving my bag to the floor with careful hands, treating the expensive leather like it's precious. "Thank you." She settles into the chair and opens her notebook. "Do you want to see my airplane? I made the wings go up to catch more sky." The drawing is exactly what you'd expect from a 7-year-old. A vaguely airplane-shaped object rendered in crayon, with proportions all wrong and wings indeed curving upward. It's the kind of thing parents stick on refrigerators. That's nice. I deliver the words with flat affect I've perfected over 2 decades of discouraging unwanted conversation. This child apparently missed the memo. She tilts her head and studies my face with unnerving directness. "You have a very serious face. My daddy has one too. It means you're thinking about important things." The observation is accurate enough to be uncomfortable. I am thinking about important things. $850 million important things. Before I can formulate a response, a male voice cuts through. "Sophie, that's someone else's seat. Come here, baby." The girl stands immediately. "Okay, Daddy." She skips back to him with her notebook clutched against her chest, and I watch the man put his hand on her shoulder with casual protectiveness. Then he looks at me. The expression on his face isn't apologetic or embarrassed. It's measuring, assessing. The look of someone who spent years evaluating threats in environments where wrong assessments got people killed. His eyes are flat and steady. He holds eye contact for exactly 2 seconds, then turns his attention back to his daughter. I feel something uncomfortable crawl up the back of my neck. In my world, I'm the one who does the assessing. This man just flipped the script. I force my attention back to my laptop, but my brain is busy constructing a narrative. Single father, obviously. The military duffel and Marine Corps hoodie suggest service, probably enlisted. Divorced or widowed, unemployed or underemployed, certainly. Nobody with a steady job wears a hoodie on a flight, probably living paycheck to paycheck, maybe on food stamps. The kind of person I write checks to charity for at the end of the year for the tax deduction, but never actually interact with. The gate agent's voice crackles. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin boarding Flight 2247 to Boston Logan. First Class and Diamond Elite members, welcome aboard. I stand immediately, collecting my bag with efficient movements. The line forms behind me, other first-class passengers creating a barrier between themselves and the masses who'll wait for their zone numbers. Behind me, I hear the little girl's voice. "Daddy, how come they go first?" The man's response is patient. "They paid more money, honey, but the plane flies the same speed for everyone, right?" There's amusement in his voice. "You're absolutely right. Sometimes people pay for the feeling of being special, not the speed." The observation lands somewhere in my chest with more force than it should. He's not wrong. The extra $2,000 I paid for this seat won't get me to Boston any faster. It buys me leather instead of cloth, 3 inches of legroom, and the psychological satisfaction of knowing I'm worth more than the people sitting behind the curtain. The first-class cabin is already half full when I board. I navigate to seat 2B and stow my carry-on. The flight attendant appears at my elbow with a warm towel and practiced smile. Her name tag reads, Karen Hughes. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Winters. Can I get you something to drink before departure?" "Perrier, please, with lime." The cabin slowly fills. Business travelers mostly, the kind who treat flights as mobile offices and understand that first class is a conversation-free zone. These are my people, the ones who understand that time is currency and small talk is bankruptcy. Through the gap where the first-class curtain hasn't quite closed, I catch a glimpse of the man and his daughter making their way down the economy aisle. She's climbing over him to reach the window seat, her small legs struggling until he boosts her up with patient hands. He helps her with her seatbelt, adjusting the strap to fit her smaller frame, then kisses her forehead. The gesture is so casual and automatic that it's clear he's done it thousands of times. The kind of muscle memory that comes from being present, from showing up day after day. I recognize it because it's the opposite of everything I've built my life around. The curtain swishes closed, blocking my view. I force myself to focus on the presentation. Slide 8 needs more supporting data. I pull up the spreadsheet and start running scenarios. The plane pushes back from the gate. The captain's voice comes through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Flight time to Boston will be approximately 4 hours and 20 minutes. The engines build to a roar, and the wheels leave the ground. Phoenix falls away beneath us, the city shrinking into a grid that looks like toys from this altitude." The seatbelt sign chimes off. Karen appears with a menu, but I wave it away. I'm not here to eat. I pull up my email and start sorting through messages. I'm halfway through composing a response when mild turbulence hits. From somewhere behind the curtain, a child's voice cuts through. "Daddy, why does the plane shake sometimes?" There's a pause, and then the man's voice, low and patient. "The air up here isn't smooth like it looks from the ground, sweetheart. There are pockets of air moving at different speeds. When the plane hits one, it bumps a little. But the plane is strong. The plane is safe." "How do you know?" "Because I know how planes work, baby. And I promise you, we're okay. Trust Daddy." The absolute conviction in those last 2 words makes my hand still on the keyboard. Trust Daddy, as if trust is something you can just hand someone and expect them to hold it safely. I've spent my career learning not to trust anyone's promises but my own. I shake off the feeling and return to my email. I make it through another 20 minutes of productive work before disaster strikes. Karen is pushing a beverage cart through first class when we hit another pocket of turbulence, harder than the first. The cart jolts, Karen stumbles, and my hand, reaching for the coffee cup she just poured, collides with hers at exactly the wrong angle. Coffee arcs through the air, a perfect parabola headed directly for my laptop keyboard. I jerk back, but it's too late. The liquid hits the MacBook Pro, immediately seeping between the keys. Are you kidding me right now? The words explode out with more force than I intended, but I'm watching $4,000 of hardware die in real time, and my presentation is on that laptop, and I don't have backups on the cloud, and my entire board presentation is disappearing into a puddle of coffee. Karen's face has gone pale. Ma'am, I am so terribly sorry. Let me get towels. Do you have any idea what you just did? This is a $4,000 computer. I have a presentation due to my board in 3 hours. Ma'am, I'll get napkins. Just stop talking. I'm standing now, holding the dripping laptop at arm's length. Coffee is running onto my seat, soaking into the expensive leather. The businessman in 1A is staring. The woman across the aisle has removed her headphones to get a better view. Karen returns with napkins and starts dabbing at the laptop with desperate optimism. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I don't need a replacement. I need the data that was on this machine. The words come out louder than intended. Several passengers in economy have turned to look. I catch a glimpse of faces wearing expressions that range from curiosity to schadenfreude. Get me towels, and tell whoever is making all that noise back there to keep it down. Some of us are trying to work. Karen freezes. Ma'am, it's just a child asking her father questions. I don't care what it is. I paid for first class. That includes quiet. Handle it. The words hang in the air, and I watch something shift in Karen's expression. Disappointment or disgust. The look of someone realizing they're dealing with a person who lacks basic human decency. I should feel ashamed. I don't. I feel angry and frustrated and cheated out of 3 hours of work time. Karen takes the soaked napkins and my ruined laptop toward the galley without another word. I sink back into my coffee-stained seat and pull out my iPad, trying to calculate how much of the presentation I can reconstruct from memory. I'm 3 slides into the reconstruction when Karen emerges from behind the curtain. She walks to row 24 and leans down, speaking in a voice too low for me to hear. The little girl, Sophie, was mid-sentence when Karen interrupted. Something about airplanes. Her face was bright and animated, the kind of unself-conscious enthusiasm that adults lose somewhere along the path to cynicism. The animation dies the moment Karen finishes speaking. Sophie's mouth closes. Her eyes drop to her notebook. Her whole body seems to curl inward, becoming smaller. Her father's jaw tightens. He looks from Karen to Sophie and back. We'll keep it down. I'm sorry we disturbed anyone. His voice is completely flat. No anger, no defensiveness, just tired resignation that comes from being on the receiving end of judgment so many times that you've stopped bothering to fight it. Karen walks away, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. And Sophie clutches her notebook to her chest like armor. She doesn't cry, but her eyes are bright with the effort of holding back tears. Through the gap in the curtain, I watch her father lean down and whisper something in her ear. Whatever he says makes her nod, but the light that was in her face before doesn't return. She opens her notebook and goes back to coloring, but the movements are mechanical now. The crayon moves across the page with careful precision that has nothing to do with creativity and everything to do with making yourself small enough not to be noticed. I did that. I silenced a child's enthusiasm because it interfered with my ability to work on a presentation that won't matter in 5 years. The realization sits in my stomach like broken glass. I should feel guilt. Instead, I feel defensive. I paid for first class specifically to avoid distractions. I have work to do, important work, that affects hundreds of people and millions of dollars. That logic holds up right until I look at my iPad screen. Projected timeline for workforce optimization. Below it, estimated impact. 90 employees across manufacturing and administrative roles. 90 employees. 90 Sophie's fathers, maybe. 90 people who probably talk to their kids about how planes work. I close the iPad and press my fingers against my closed eyes. This is why I don't think about the names, because the moment you start thinking about the actual human beings attached to those 90 jobs, you can't make the hard decisions. I make it through another 40 minutes before Sophie appears again. I don't notice her approach until she's standing right beside my seat. She's holding her notebook against her chest with both hands, expression caught between hopeful and terrified. "Excuse me, missus. I just need 1 minute." I fixed the drawing. Behind her, her father is asleep in his economy seat, head tilted back at an angle that suggests exhaustion, finally overwhelmed vigilance. Karen is nowhere to be seen, which means Sophie has made this pilgrimage on her own, driven by something important enough to risk getting in trouble again. I should send her back. Instead, I hear myself say, 1 minute. Sophie's face transforms. She opens her notebook to a page near the middle and holds it up. The airplane has been redrawn entirely. The wings still curve upward, but now there's shading underneath that gives them dimension. The sky around the plane is vibrant blue, colored with such force that I can see indentations in the paper. See, I made them catch more sky, and I made the sky happy again, because my daddy says even when things are scary, the sky is still beautiful if you remember to look up. The observation hits behind my rib cage. I find myself actually studying the drawing, looking at the way she's tried to capture motion in static crayon. Where did you learn about wing design? My daddy knows about airplanes. Is your father a pilot or something? Sophie's face lights up. My daddy flew jets for the Navy off of ships in the ocean. He says it's the hardest flying in the whole world. The information rearranges everything I thought I knew about the man in the worn hoodie. Jets, Navy, carrier-based. That level of skill doesn't come cheap. That kind of training represents millions of dollars of government investment, which means my entire narrative about unemployed single father is potentially completely wrong. Before I can respond, her father appears. Sophie, right now. His voice has that particular quality that suggests the words aren't a request. Sophie turns immediately. He puts his hand on her shoulder and looks at me. I apologize. Again, she won't bother you anymore. The words are perfectly polite, but there's something underneath that might be judgment or pity. She's not bothering me. The sentence escapes before I can stop it. She's very smart. Curious. That's a valuable trait. Surprise registers on his face. Your daughter said you flew in the Navy? The question hangs between us. Finally, yes, ma'am, a long time ago. He's already turning when I hear myself ask, what kind of jets? He stops, looks back. F/A, 18 Super Hornets, carrier-based strike fighters. He delivers the information with flat affect, but I know enough about military aviation to understand what those words mean. F/A-18S are flown only by pilots who survived some of the most demanding training in the world. This man standing in front of me in his worn hoodie has done things that 99% of the population couldn't do, even if their lives depended on it. And I looked at him and saw someone to be dismissed. But that was a different life. He says it casually, like it doesn't matter anymore. Then he's gone, leading Sophie back through the curtain, and I'm left alone with my iPad and my half-finished presentation and the growing certainty that I've made a terrible mistake. I try to return to work, but the numbers won't cooperate. They keep rearranging themselves into faces, into fathers who might be teaching their daughters about how planes work. At 8:52 p.m. Phoenix time, everything changes. The turbulence hits without warning, violent enough to be frightening. The plane doesn't bump, it drops. 70, maybe 80 feet in 3 seconds, that stomach-lifting sensation of freefall. Overhead bins pop open, a bag tumbles into the aisle. Someone screams. My hands find the armrests and grip hard enough that my knuckles go white. Through the speakers, Captain Ford's voice cuts through. "Ladies and gentlemen, return to your seats immediately. Flight attendants, secure the cabin now." The plane lurches left, a hard sideways movement that has nothing to do with weather. Through the cockpit door gap, I hear voices. Hydraulic system 2 showing 0 pressure. Left aileron response degraded to 30%. The intercom clicks. 5 seconds of silence. Then Captain Ford's voice, and this time the control is slipping. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have experienced a serious technical malfunction. Please remain calm." A pause. The cabin holds its breath. At this time, we are asking, is there anyone on board with active or former military pilot experience, specifically fighter jet or multi-engine aircraft? Please identify yourself to a crew member immediately. The cabin erupts, not into screaming, not yet, but into terrible buzzing chaos. Around me, first class transforms. The businessman is praying loudly. The woman has both hands pressed over her mouth. Someone is crying. And me? I'm frozen, because everything I've built is about to become irrelevant. The Mercer deal doesn't matter if this plane crashes. My empire, my reputation, none of it matters if we're all dead in the next 30 minutes. Through the gap in the curtain, I see movement. A man standing in row 24, moving with purpose, not panic, handing something to the small figure beside him, leaning down to whisper in her ear. Even from here, I can see Sophie nod with serious concentration. Her father kisses her forehead, then stands and turns toward the front of the cabin. He's already moving when Karen appears beside him. They exchange 3 sentences I can't hear. Then he's walking up the aisle toward me, toward the cockpit. He passes my seat without looking at me, his focus already on whatever waits behind that door. His face has transformed from tired father into something harder, sharper, and as he disappears through the cockpit door, I realize with perfect clarity that the man I dismissed and judged and silenced is about to try to save all of us, including me. The cockpit door closes behind Robert Sullivan with a sound like a vault ceiling, and I'm left staring at brushed aluminum, wondering if I just watched a man walk toward his own death or everyone's salvation. Around me, first class has devolved into barely controlled chaos. The businessman in 1A has progressed from prayer to openly weeping, his expensive suit jacket soaked with tears and sweat. The woman across the aisle rocks back and forth with her arms wrapped around her middle, a low keening sound escaping her throat. Someone 3 rows back is vomiting into an air sickness bag with rhythmic desperation. I should be terrified too. By any rational measure, I should be one of the people crying or praying or sending frantic goodbye texts to loved ones. But my emotional circuitry seems to have shorted out somewhere between the captain's announcement and watching Robert disappear into the cockpit. Instead of fear, I feel a peculiar numbness, the kind that comes when your brain encounters a problem too big to process and simply shuts down. The plane lurches again, that same wrong sideways movement that has nothing to do with air currents and everything to do with mechanical failure. My iPad slides off the tray table and hits the floor with a crack that probably means the screen is destroyed. I don't reach for it. the Mercer presentation, and the workforce optimization timeline, and the 90 jobs I was planning to eliminate all seemed distant and abstract now. Problems from a life I used to live before I understood what it felt like to be utterly helpless. Through the gap in the curtain dividing first class from economy, I can see Sophie. She's pressed against the window in row 24, her notebook open on her lap, but she's not drawing. Her hands are flat on the pages, gripping the spiral binding hard enough that her knuckles have gone pale. Her face is turned toward the front of the cabin, toward the cockpit door, where her father disappeared, and even from here I can see the tears streaming down her cheeks. She's 7 years old, and she's alone, and she's terrified, and her father is in that cockpit trying to save 200 people he doesn't know, while she sits here wondering if this is the last time she'll ever see him. The realization moves through me like electricity, shocking my frozen emotional circuits back online. I unbuckle my seatbelt before I'm consciously aware of making the decision, standing up on legs that feel unsteady. Karen appears at my elbow immediately. "Ma'am, you need to stay seated with your belt fastened. I'm going back there to row 24. Ma'am, you're safer here in first class, the structure forward of the wing." I don't care about structure. The words come out harder than I intend, but Karen's argument dies when she sees my face. She steps aside, and I walk through the curtain into economy. The difference between first class and coach has never felt more irrelevant. Leather seats or cloth, 3 inches of extra legroom. None of it matters when you're in a metal tube at 37,000 feet with failing hydraulics. We're all the same now, stripped of the pretense that money can buy safety. The passengers stare as I make my way down the aisle. A woman in first class walking toward the back during an emergency doesn't fit their understanding of how social hierarchies work. I watch confusion register on their faces, then something that might be hope. Row 24 feels farther away than it should be, but finally I reach Sophie, and she looks up at me with those enormous brown eyes swimming in tears, and I lower myself into Robert's empty seat without asking permission. "You're the lady who said we were too loud." She delivers this observation with factual precision, no accusation in her tone. Just a child noting what she knows to be true. Yes, and I was wrong, so very wrong. I'm sorry, Sophie. She studies my face for a long moment. Then her expression softens slightly. "It's okay. My daddy says mean people are just sad people having really bad days." The observation lands with enough force to make my breath catch. Mean people are just sad people. The casual wisdom of it, the way she's already learned to interpret cruelty as pain rather than malice, tells me more about her father's character than anything I learned about his military service. Your daddy is very wise. Sophie nods, accepting this as established fact. She returns her attention to the cockpit door, her whole body oriented toward it, like a compass needle finding north. "What are you drawing?" The question seems absurd, given our circumstances, but I need to fill the silence. Sophie looks down at her notebook as if surprised to find it still in her hands. I was drawing Daddy coming back. Every plane I draw is like a promise. If I draw enough of them, it comes true. She shows me the page. Dozens of airplanes rendered in crayon, all with those impossible upward curving wings, all surrounded by blue sky that she's colored with such force that the paper has torn in places. The obsessive repetition of it breaks something in my chest. How do you know he'll come back? Her certainty is absolute, because he promised, and Daddy never breaks promises. Not anymore. The qualification hangs in the air. Not anymore. suggesting there was a time when promises were broken, when her father didn't come back when he said he would. A marriage that couldn't survive the competing loyalties between duty and family. Not anymore. He came home. He chose her. And now he's in that cockpit, doing the same thing he did when he wore a uniform, putting himself between danger and the people who need protecting. Sophie shifts in her seat, leaning slightly against my shoulder with unconscious trust. My body goes rigid for a moment, unused to this kind of contact. Then slowly, awkwardly, I put my arm around her small shoulders. She's solid and warm and real in a way that balance sheets never are. I can feel her heartbeat where her back presses against my side, faster than it should be. 7 years old and maintaining composure better than most of the adults around her because her father taught her that panic doesn't solve problems. The plane shudders again, a sustained vibration that feels wrong in my bones. Around us, passengers clutch their armrests and each other, and Sophie starts to sing. It's barely above a whisper at first, so quiet I almost miss it. But as I focus, I recognize the melody. You are my sunshine. My mother used to sing that to me. Before I got too important for bedtime songs, before I decided that success mattered more than connection. The memory surfaces with sharp edges. I find myself humming along without planning to, my voice rough from disuse. Sophie glances up with something like surprise. Then her singing gets fractionally louder, and I match her volume. The woman in the row ahead turns around, and instead of telling us to be quiet, she joins in. Then the elderly man. Then someone else. Within 30 seconds, half of economy class is singing while flying through the sky in a crippled aircraft. And it's the most surreal and human thing I've ever experienced. It becomes a declaration of defiance against the randomness of mechanical failure and the possibility of death. We're still here. We're still breathing. We can still make something beautiful even when everything is falling apart. The singing gradually fades. The cabin settles back into anxious silence, broken only by the changed pitch of the engines and the occasional sob. The plane's nose dips slightly. Descent, I realize. We're losing altitude. Karen's voice comes through the overhead speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our emergency descent to Hartford Brainerd Airport. Please ensure your seat belts are fastened and your tray tables are in the upright position. When instructed, you will assume the brace position. Follow crew instructions exactly. Sophie's grip on her notebook tightens. Her eyes never leave the cockpit door. Behind that door, Robert Sullivan is doing something I can't see or understand. Something that requires training I don't have and courage I've never needed to develop. The man I dismissed as unemployed, as someone whose presence was an inconvenience, is now the only thing standing between all of us and a crater in Connecticut. The magnitude of my error in judgment sits in my stomach like a stone. How many times have I done this? How many people have I looked at and categorized and filed away as irrelevant based on surface assessments? The thought spirals outward to encompass the Mercer workforce data sitting on my destroyed laptop. 400 employees, 90 of whom I was planning to eliminate without ever learning their names, without asking if any of them were former fighter pilots or single parents or people who sang songs to comfort frightened children. Just numbers in a spreadsheet, acceptable casualties in the pursuit of shareholder value. The plane drops again, harder this time, a sickening lurch that sends air sickness bags into emergency deployment. Sophie makes a small sound of distress, and I hold her tighter, wishing I had words that could make this less terrifying. So instead, I just hold her and keep my mouth shut and try to be present in a way I haven't been present for another human being in longer than I can remember. No strategic thinking about what this moment means. No calculating what I can gain. Just being here, being still, being whatever small shelter I can provide. The minutes stretch. Every second feels impossibly long, while simultaneously racing toward whatever conclusion waits at the end of this emergency descent. My mind keeps trying to slip into planning mode, but I force it back to the present. The only thing that matters is Sophie's heartbeat against my side and the fact that we're both still breathing. Karen appears beside our row, her face professionally composed, but her hands shaking slightly. She crouches down so she's at eye level with Sophie. "How are we doing over here?" Sophie wipes at her tears with the back of her hand. "Good, my daddy's in there helping fly the plane, so we're going to be okay." The certainty in her voice nearly breaks me. That absolute faith that her father can fix anything, solve any problem. The kind of trust that comes from consistent follow-through, from a parent who shows up even when it's hard. I've never inspired that kind of trust in anyone. Karen's eyes shift to me, and something complicated passes between us. An acknowledgement, maybe, of the transformation that's occurred since I yelled at her about my ruined laptop. "Thank you for staying with her." The gratitude in her tone suggests she sees my presence here as noble sacrifice. But we both know the truth. I didn't come back here for Sophie. I came back here because sitting alone in first class felt unbearable, while sitting with someone who needed comfort gave me a purpose I could actually fulfill. Karen moves on to check other passengers. The plane's descent continues, steady and controlled in a way that gives me fragile hope. If we were in true freefall, the angle would be steeper. The fact that someone is managing the rate suggests the situation is bad, but not yet catastrophic. Sophie has gone very still against my side. She's not coloring anymore, not singing, not even crying, just existing in a state of suspended terror. I want to tell her it's going to be okay. I want to promise that her father will walk out of that cockpit and nothing will change. But I've spent my career learning to spot lies, and I won't add my voice to the chorus of false comfort. So instead, I just hold her and let my presence be the only promise I can keep. You're not alone. My phone buzzes in my jacket pocket, probably messages from Stephen or board members. I don't check it. For the first time in my professional life, I don't care what crisis is unfolding in my inbox. The engines change pitch again. Around us, passengers notice. Conversations die out as everyone focuses on that changed frequency, trying to divine meaning from variations in noise. Then Karen's voice, and this time there's something different in her tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing our approach to Hartford. The captain has asked that you prepare for landing by ensuring all loose items are stowed. When we give the command, assume the brace position. Lean forward with your head between your knees and your hands over your head. Landing, not crashing, the distinction matters enormously." Sophie sits up straighter. "That's good, right? If we're landing, that means Daddy did it. That means he saved everyone." Her logic is sound, but I've been in enough high-stakes negotiations to know that nothing is certain until it's done. We're not saved until wheels are on the ground and the plane has stopped moving. But looking at her face, at the hope fighting to overcome fear, I can't bring myself to inject caution. Your father is very good at what he does. If anyone can bring us home safely, it's him. The words come out more certain than I feel, but they achieve their purpose. Sophie's shoulders drop slightly. She returns to her notebook and starts drawing again, adding details to one of her impossible airplanes with renewed focus. The altitude continues dropping. My ears pop as cabin pressure adjusts. Through the window, I can see we've descended below the cloud layer. Dark landscape spreads out beneath us, scattered lights marking towns and highways. It's beautiful in an austere way, this view of Connecticut from 5,000 feet, 4,000 feet. The plane levels out slightly, and I feel the landing gear deploy with mechanical clunks. The sound should be reassuring, but instead it ratchets my anxiety higher. We're committed now. The intercom crackles. Final approach. Brace positions on my command. Crew, prepare for emergency landing. Around us, passengers lean forward into the crash position. Sophie looks at me with sudden fear. It's going to be bumpy when we land. But your daddy taught the pilots how to do this safely. You trust him, right? She nods, but her lower lip is trembling. Then let's get into position together. I'll be right here the whole time. I help her assume the brace position, my hands gentle on her small back. Then I lean forward myself, my body curving protectively over hers, even though I know our positions won't matter much if this goes catastrophically wrong. But the instinct to shield her is stronger than logic. 3,000 feet. 2,000. The engines sound different, throttling back as we slow. I can feel every adjustment the pilots make, each tiny correction translated through the aircraft structure. Karen's voice one final time. Brace, brace, brace. And then we're coming in, the ground rushing up at impossible speed. My whole body tenses. Sophie is shaking beneath me, and I press my hand more firmly against her back. The wheels kiss pavement with surprising gentleness. For one perfect moment, I think we're going to make it cleanly. Then the nose wheel hits harder than it should, a jarring impact that rattles my teeth and sends the plane bouncing slightly before settling back down. The engine noise changes to a roar as reverse thrust engages, brakes applied with enough force to throw us all forward against our seatbelts. The plane decelerates brutally. Slower, slower. The runway lights begin to separate into distinct points, then stopped. Complete, total, impossible stillness. For 5 seconds, nobody moves. Then reality crashes in like a wave. Someone starts crying, raw sobs of relief. Someone else is laughing, slightly hysterical. The elderly couple 2 rows forward are embracing. Sophie sits up slowly, looking around with dazed confusion. We're okay? We're on the ground? We didn't crash? We're safe. Your father brought us home. The words are barely out of my mouth when the cockpit door opens and Robert steps into the cabin. He looks exhausted, his face pale and drawn, sweat darkening the collar of his hoodie. But his eyes are already scanning, looking for one specific person, and when they find Sophie, something in his expression breaks open. He doesn't run. But he moves quickly down the aisle, and Sophie is already unbuckling, already scrambling over my legs to get to the aisle, already launching herself at her father with complete abandon. Robert drops to one knee and catches her, wrapping both arms around her small body and lifting her off the ground. His face presses into her hair, and I watch his shoulders shake. Sophie has her arms locked around his neck and her face buried against his shoulder, and neither of them makes a sound. They just hold each other in the aisle while 200 people watch, and I sit in Robert's seat with tears streaming down my face. The moment breaks something in me that I didn't know was still intact. Some last protective wall between who I've been and who I might become. This is what love looks like when it's not transactional. This is what it means to show up for someone, not because of what they can do for you, but because their existence matters more than your own. I've built an empire. I've made millions. I've been on magazine covers, and I would trade every bit of it right now to have one person in my life who would hold me the way Robert is holding Sophie. Captain Ford emerges from the cockpit, and the cabin erupts into applause. He waves it off, his attention fixed on Robert. I watch them lock eyes across the cabin, some wordless communication passing between them. Robert finally sets Sophie down, but keeps one hand on her shoulder. The passengers are starting to move now, unbuckling seatbelts, reaching for bags. But Robert stays still in the aisle, his daughter pressed against his side, looking at me. The expression on his face is complicated. Not gratitude exactly, though there's some of that. Something more like recognition. You didn't have to do that. Come back here. First class is structurally safer. I know. The words hang between us, and I watch him process the implications. That I chose to be here, that keeping Sophie company mattered more than my own safety. Thank you. The gratitude is quiet and genuine. This might be the first time in years that someone has thanked me for something that wasn't ultimately about business. She's remarkable. You've raised someone extraordinary. Sophie looks up at her father, not entirely sure whether being called remarkable is good or bad. Robert's hand tightens slightly on her shoulder. She's my whole world. The statement is simple and absolute. It makes me think about my whole world. Corner offices and quarterly reports and stock prices. Things that can be measured and controlled. Things that feel important right up until you're in a plane with failing hydraulics and you realize none of it matters at all. The deplaning process begins. Emergency vehicles are visible through the windows, fire trucks and ambulances with their lights painting the cabin in rotating colors. Passengers file toward the exits slowly, everyone still processing what just happened. I stand up, and my legs are less steady than I'd like. Robert notices. You okay? The question is reflexive. I nod, not trusting my voice. Sophie has detached herself long enough to retrieve her notebook. She flips through the pages, finds something, then carefully tears out a single sheet and holds it up to me. It's one of her airplane drawings, rendered with more care than the others. The wings curve upward, and the sky is filled with stars. At the bottom, in careful crayon letters, "For the lady who stayed." I take the drawing with hands that shake slightly, and something in my chest cracks wide open. When was the last time someone gave me something that wasn't a business proposal or an invoice? When was the last time I received a gift that had no ulterior motive, just pure generosity? Thank you, Sophie. I'll treasure this. She smiles, and the brightness of it is almost painful. Then she takes her father's hand, and they move toward the exit. I follow at a distance, clutching Sophie's drawing. The emergency slides have been deployed. One by one, we all make the transition from aircraft to tarmac, from crisis to safety. Connecticut air hits my face when I reach the slide, cool and sharp. I sit at the top and push off, the brief moment of weightlessness somehow more frightening than anything that happened in the air. Then I'm on the ground, legs wobbling, being guided away from the aircraft. Robert and Sophie are ahead of me, already being shepherded toward the emergency vehicles. I watch them walk away, and I'm struck by the realization that I may never see them again. This moment of intersection, this crisis that forced me to confront the emptiness at the center of my existence, might end right here. The thought bothers me more than it should. The airline has set up a staging area in the terminal. I accept a bottle of water and find an empty chair. My phone has been buzzing nonstop, but I still can't bring myself to check it. Whatever fires are burning in my inbox, they can wait. Robert appears in my peripheral vision, Sophie still attached to his side. They're being escorted by someone who looks official. He sees me and changes direction slightly. The airline is putting us up in a hotel for the night. They're arranging a flight to Boston tomorrow morning. His voice is hoarse. I nod, not sure what response he's expecting. Sophie wanted to make sure you knew. In case you wanted to. She trails off, looking uncertain for the first time. The hotel information would be good to have for the morning flight coordination. It's a weak excuse, and we both know it. But he nods, pulling out his phone to show me the booking confirmation. I copy the hotel name into my own phone. Sophie breaks the silence. Are you going to come to my science fair? The question comes from nowhere. Both Robert and I stare at her in confusion. She looks between us with complete seriousness. Sophie, I don't think, Robert starts, but she cuts him off. It's tomorrow at 3 o'clock at Cambridge Elementary. I made a hydraulic system out of straws, and it shows how airplane controls work, and I want you to see it. The invitation is offered with such pure sincerity that refusing feels like it would damage something precious. But accepting means staying connected to these people, means allowing this crisis to be the beginning of something. I don't know anything about hydraulic systems. Sophie's smile is bright. That's okay, I can teach you. And there it is. The offer of continued connection wrapped in the enthusiasm of a 7-year-old who hasn't learned yet that adults are supposed to maintain professional distance. Robert looks at me, and I see the question in his eyes. He's curious about what I'll choose, whether I'll retreat back into the safety of my corporate existence or take the risk of staying open. I look at Sophie's hopeful face and Robert's careful neutrality and the drawing still clutched in my hand. And I make a choice that Margaret Winters from yesterday would never have made. I'd love to see your hydraulic system, Sophie. Cambridge Elementary at 3 o'clock. I'll be there. The joy that lights up her face is worth whatever complications this creates. She throws her arms around my waist in an impulsive hug, and I manage to get my arms around her in return. When she releases me and steps back to her father's side, I see something shift in Robert's expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around his eyes. We'll see you tomorrow, then. He guides Sophie away toward the exit. I watch them go, aware that I've just committed to something that doesn't fit into any category I know how to navigate. This isn't a business relationship or a networking opportunity. This is just human connection, the kind I've spent decades avoiding, the kind that might actually matter more than anything else I've ever done. My phone buzzes again. 17 missed calls, 34 texts. Stephen's messages progress from professional concern to barely controlled panic. The board wants an emergency meeting. Mercer's team is threatening to walk. I scroll through them with detached interest. If my empire can't survive 4 hours without my constant attention, then maybe it's not as solid as I thought. I tap out a single message to Stephen. Flight emergency landed Hartford. Everyone safe. Handle Mercer. I'll call tomorrow. Then I turn off my phone completely and sit in a plastic airport chair with a bottle of water and a crayon drawing of an impossible airplane. And I think about what it means to start over at 44 years old. Part 3. 6,000 words. The Hartford hotel room smells like industrial cleaning solution and someone else's choices. I stand at the window, looking out at a parking lot illuminated by sodium lights, still wearing the coffee-stained suit from a lifetime ago, and try to remember who Margaret Winters was before she understood what it felt like to be completely powerless. The phone sits on the nightstand where I placed it 2 hours ago, still turned off. The silence feels dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff and considering what it would mean to step forward instead of back. 18 years I've been CEO of Winters Capital. 18 years of being the first person in the office and the last to leave, of sacrificing everything on the altar of achievement. And in 4 hours of radio silence, the whole structure is threatening to collapse. Maybe it should collapse. Maybe something built on that foundation deserves to fall. I pull out Sophie's drawing from my jacket pocket, the paper already showing creases from being folded and unfolded repeatedly. The impossible airplane, with its upward curving wings, looks back at me, and I wonder what it says about my life, that a child's crayon sketch is the most meaningful thing anyone has given me in a decade. For the lady who stayed. The words undo me every time, as if staying were remarkable instead of the bare minimum of human decency, as if sitting with a frightened child were an act of extraordinary kindness, rather than what any decent person would do. Except I spent the first hour of that flight making sure everyone understood that I was not the kind of person who wanted children near me. I complained about noise. I demanded silence. I treated Sophie and Robert like inconveniences to be managed. The lady who stayed, but almost didn't. My reflection in the window looks unfamiliar. Same face, same expensive suit, same carefully maintained exterior. But something in my eyes has shifted, some fundamental change in how I occupy space in the world. I look less certain, more vulnerable, possibly more human. The hotel phone rings. I cross to the nightstand and pick up the receiver. Ms. Winters, this is the front desk. We have a gentleman here asking to speak with you. Captain Michael Ford. He says it's about the flight. Send him up. I smooth my jacket reflexively. When the knock comes 3 minutes later, I open the door to find Captain Ford looking significantly more human than the last time I saw him. He's changed out of his uniform into jeans and a button-down, and the exhaustion is written clearly across his face. Ms. Winters, I apologize for the intrusion. Do you have a moment? Of course. Come in. He enters with careful courtesy, waiting for me to gesture toward the chair before sitting. I take the desk chair, maintaining the slight formality of business meeting choreography. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did during the emergency. Karen told me you left first class to sit with the child whose father was assisting us in the cockpit. I didn't do anything remarkable. I just sat with her. You didn't have to. Most people in your position wouldn't have. The observation lands uncomfortably. Most people in your position, meaning wealthy, successful, accustomed to prioritizing their own safety above the needs of strangers' children. Her father was saving all of us. The least I could do was make sure she wasn't alone while he did it. Captain Ford leans back slightly. About Robert Sullivan, you should know what happened in that cockpit. I'm not sure I want to know. Knowing makes it harder to maintain the distance I've been trying to rebuild. But I nod anyway. We were in serious trouble. Hydraulic System 2 complete failure, left flight controls degraded to 30%, engine 2 running dangerously hot. I've been flying for 23 years, and I've never been that close to losing control. He pauses, choosing words carefully. When Sullivan came into that cockpit, I'll be honest, I had doubts. Civilian clothes, looked exhausted, and we're in a crisis where I need someone who can perform under pressure. But the moment he sat down, everything changed. How? He understood the aircraft better than I did. Not the systems, this is a commercial 737, not a fighter jet, but the principles. How to manage degraded hydraulics by anticipating delays, how to use asymmetric thrust to maintain control, how to talk a pilot through crisis without adding to panic. Ford's voice dropped slightly. There was a moment about 12 minutes before landing when I wanted to give up. Engine 2 had just crossed red line. We were fighting crosswinds, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the yoke. And Sullivan looked at me and said something I'll never forget. He stops. What did he say? You've already done the hard part, Captain. Everything before this moment. The training, the experience, the times you thought you couldn't handle it, but did anyway. You've already paid for this knowledge. The only thing left is to use it. The words settled into my chest like stones. You've already paid for this knowledge. The simple elegance of it, the way it reframes crisis as application rather than test. That's when I knew we were going to make it, because I was flying with someone who had been through worse and survived. And if he believed I could do this, then maybe I could. Captain Ford stands, extending his hand. I wanted you to know that. Wanted you to understand what kind of man sat with your daughter while you helped keep us alive. I shake his hand, but the words stick. He's not, she's not, we're not family. Except the correction dies before I can voice it, because how do I explain what we are? Strangers bound by crisis? A CEO and a former fighter pilot whose paths crossed for 4 hours and might never intersect again. Ford leaves, and I'm alone again with my thoughts and Sophie's drawing and the growing certainty that I can't go back to being who I was yesterday. The question is whether I'm brave enough to figure out who I might become tomorrow. I turn my phone back on at 11 p.m. The messages flood in with relentless pressure. Stephen has escalated from panic to fury. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Mercer's legal team has issued an ultimatum. Revise terms by end of business Friday, or they walk. Everything I've worked for threatening to unravel because I chose to be unreachable during a crisis. I stare at the screen, and instead of the familiar spike of adrenaline, I feel clarity. These people threatening to walk, these board members demanding my immediate attention, none of them were on that plane. None of them faced the possibility of dying and had to recalculate what actually matters. They're still operating in a world where quarterly earnings and market share define success. I just spent 4 hours in a world where the only metric that mattered was whether we lived or died. I call Stephen. He answers on the first ring. Margaret, where the hell have you been? The board is losing their minds. Stephen, stop. There's a beat of silence. I need you to pull the complete Mercer workforce data, all 400 employees. Names, tenure, departments, family status if we have it. I want it on my desk when I get back to Boston. We already have the workforce data. It's in the restructuring plan. I want the detailed version, not the summary, not the reduction in force targets. The actual people. Margaret, I don't understand why. Because I'm going to read it. Every single file, every single person we're planning to cut. And then I'm going to make a decision about whether this deal makes sense. We've already decided it makes sense. The numbers are solid. The numbers are always solid, Stephen. That's not the question anymore. Another beat of silence. Are you sure you're okay? The flight emergency. It must have been traumatic. Maybe you should take a few days before making major decisions. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having the opposite of a breakdown. I'm finally seeing clearly. I can hear him processing this. When he speaks again, his tone is conciliatory. Okay, I'll pull the detailed data. But the board meeting tomorrow is mandatory. Hendricks is pushing for a vote of no confidence. He's saying you've become emotionally unstable, that the near-death experience has compromised your judgment. Then I'll attend the meeting and demonstrate that my judgment is better than it's ever been. We end the call, and I sit with the reality of what I've just set in motion. Hendricks has been angling for my position since he joined the board 18 months ago. A vote of no confidence would give him the ammunition he needs to push me out. The old Margaret would be strategizing right now, calling allies, preparing a defense. The new Margaret feels the threat as background noise rather than existential crisis. If they don't want a CEO who thinks about actual human beings instead of just optimization targets, then maybe they need a different CEO. The thought should terrify me. Instead, it feels like possibility. I sleep poorly, dreams fragmenting into images of falling and emergency announcements and Sophie's face. When my alarm goes off at 6, I'm already awake, staring at the ceiling. The flight to Boston is mercifully uneventful. I'm in economy this time. The airline bumped everyone to economy on the replacement flight. The irony of sitting in row 18 instead of row 2 isn't lost on me. 3 rows ahead, I can see Robert and Sophie. She's coloring again. He's reading something on his phone. The normalcy of it is startling. Just a father and daughter on a morning flight, indistinguishable from dozens of other families except for the fact that he prevented a plane crash 12 hours ago. We land at Logan at 10:15. I watch Robert and Sophie deplane ahead of me, struck again by the casual competence of his parenting, the way he automatically checks that she has her notebook and backpack, the way his hand finds her shoulder in crowded spaces, the thousand small gestures that add up to a child who feels safe. My office in Back Bay looks exactly as I left it, which feels wrong somehow. The same leather furniture, the same view of the harbor, the same stack of briefing documents, everything unchanged except me. The workforce data Stephen promised is waiting in my inbox. 417 files, each one a summary of a human being reduced to employment history and performance metrics. I open the first file at random. Sarah Brennan, manufacturing supervisor, hired June 2001, 23 years tenure. 2 daughters, both in college. Husband deceased 2019, flagged for potential elimination. I close the file and open another. Michael Torres, quality control specialist, hired April 2009, 15 years tenure. Former Army sergeant. Elder care responsibilities noted. Both parents, early stage dementia, also flagged for elimination. The pattern repeats. Real people with real lives who will lose their jobs because the margins improve by 32% if we execute the reduction in force in Q2. I think about Robert's voice in the cockpit. You've already paid for this knowledge. The only thing left is to use it. These 400 people have paid for their knowledge too. 2 decades of showing up, learning systems, building expertise, and I was going to eliminate 90 of them without ever learning their names because the spreadsheet said it would optimize shareholder value. I pick up the phone and call Rebecca Shaw, my general counsel. Margaret, I heard about the flight. Are you all right? I'm fine. I need you to do something for me. Of course, the Mercer indemnification clause, the one that puts all wrongful termination liability on us. I want it revised, shared liability. If Mercer wants us to make the cuts, they share the legal risk. There's a pause. Margaret, that will almost certainly kill the deal. Then they don't believe in their own restructuring plan. And if they don't believe in it, why should we take on all the risk? Because we stand to make $850 million. Do we? Or do we stand to destroy 90 families for a quarterly earnings bump that will be forgotten in 5 years? Rebecca's silence stretches. Finally, Margaret, what happened on that flight? I learned that the way we've been doing business is morally bankrupt, and I can't do it anymore. The board meeting starts at 2 o'clock. I arrive 15 minutes early. The conference room on the 47th floor offers a panoramic view of Boston Harbor. Sailboats cutting white lines through blue water. Hendricks is already there, along with two other board members whose body language suggests coordination. They look up when I enter, and I watch Hendricks's expression shift into something that might be sympathy if I didn't know him better. Margaret, we were all so relieved to hear you survived. What a terrifying experience. His tone is calibrated to sound concerned while planting the seed that the experience has left me damaged. It was clarifying, actually. Nothing like facing mortality to help you understand what actually matters, of course. And we certainly understand if you need some time before making major decisions. That's part of what we wanted to discuss today. The trap is obvious. I'm not interested in taking time off, Hendricks. I'm interested in discussing the direction of this company and whether our current strategy aligns with our values. Hendricks exchanges glances with his allies. This isn't the shaken CEO they were expecting. The remaining board members file in. Some offer genuine concern. Others jump straight to business. I answer with enough specificity to demonstrate competence while avoiding commitment. At precisely 2 o'clock, our board chair, Thomas Aldridge, calls the meeting to order. The agenda is routine until we reach item 7. CEO Performance Review. Hendricks wastes no time. I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Margaret experienced a traumatic event yesterday. Near-death experiences are known to cause impaired judgment and altered risk assessment. Given the stakes of our current portfolio, I believe we need to seriously consider whether she's in the right headspace to lead this company. The attack is more direct than I anticipated, which means he's confident he has the votes. Thomas turns to me. Margaret, would you like to respond? I stand, changing the power dynamics. Hendricks, you're absolutely right. The emergency landing did alter my judgment. It forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about how we've been operating. I moved to the windows. For 18 years, I've run this company on a single principle: maximize shareholder value above all else. Acquire companies, strip out inefficiencies, optimize operations, exit at a profit. We've been very successful by that metric. I pause. But yesterday, at 37,000 feet with failing hydraulics, I realized something. When I thought I was going to die, I didn't think about our portfolio valuation or quarterly earnings. I thought about the specific people on that plane: the woman crying in 11C, the man praying in 14A, the 7-year-old girl who was terrified her father wouldn't come back. Hendricks tries to interrupt, but I keep going. And it occurred to me that we've been treating our workforce the same way I was treating those passengers before the crisis: as abstractions, as optimization targets, as numbers on a spreadsheet rather than human beings with families and mortgages and lives that matter. I pull the Mercer workforce file from my briefcase and drop it on the conference table. 417 people, 90 of whom we plan to eliminate to improve our margins. I read every single file last night. Sarah Brennan, 23 years, putting 2 daughters through college alone after her husband died. Michael Torres, 15 years, caring for 2 parents with dementia. Hendricks cuts in. Margaret, we all sympathize with individual hardship, but that's not how business works. If we start making decisions based on emotional attachment, I'm not suggesting emotional attachment. I'm suggesting we make decisions that account for the actual cost of our actions. The Mercer deal, as currently structured, puts all wrongful termination liability on us so we can execute cuts that Mercer designed but doesn't want responsibility for. I've instructed Rebecca to revise the terms to shared liability. The room erupts. Hendricks is on his feet. That will kill the deal. Then the deal deserves to die. If Mercer won't share the risk of decisions they're asking us to make, they don't believe in their own strategy. This is insane. Thomas, you can't seriously. Thomas raises his hand. Margaret, let me make sure I understand. You're proposing we walk away from an $850 million acquisition because you're uncomfortable with the workforce reduction. I'm proposing we restructure the terms to reflect appropriate risk allocation. And yes, if that means walking away, I think we should. Because the moment we start treating people as expendable for quarterly performance, we become the kind of company that destroys value instead of creating it. The silence is absolute. I've just committed heresy against the fundamental doctrine of private equity. Hendricks recovers. This is exactly what I was worried about. Margaret has clearly been compromised by yesterday's trauma. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence. The motion hangs in the air. Thomas looks around the table, gauging reactions. Before we vote, Thomas begins, but I interrupt. Actually, before we vote, you should know something else. Last night I received notice from the Connecticut Attorney General's office. They're opening an investigation into workplace safety violations at 3 of our portfolio companies. If it proceeds, we're looking at significant fines and potentially criminal liability. This is new information to everyone, including me, as of 40 minutes ago when Rebecca forwarded the notice. I watch comprehension dawn. Now we can continue operating the way we have been, maximizing short-term profits while exposing ourselves to long-term legal risk. Or we can start making decisions that account for actual human and legal costs. Those aren't emotional decisions. Those are smart business decisions made by someone who finally understands that sustainability matters more than quarterly performance. I sit down, having said everything I came to say. Thomas calls for a 15-minute recess. The board members file out in clusters. I stay in my seat, looking out at the harbor. Rebecca slips into the chair beside me. That was either brilliant or insane. Me neither. The investigation is real, by the way. I've been trying to get you to pay attention to it for 3 months. How bad is it? Bad enough that if we don't address it properly, we could be looking at 8-figure fines and criminal charges. The violations are in manufacturing facilities, safety equipment failures, inadequate training, OSHA violations dating back 18 months. How many people have been hurt? Rebecca pulls out her tablet. 17 injuries serious enough to require medical treatment. 1 fatality, though the family settled and signed an NDA. I close my eyes. We paid someone off for dying in our facility, and I didn't even know about it. You approved the settlement last year. It was buried in the quarterly legal expenditures report. She's right, I did approve it. Signed off on a line item without asking questions because the dollar amount was small enough not to require board approval, and I was busy with other acquisitions. Someone died because our facility wasn't safe enough, and I treated it as a routine legal expense. The board files back in exactly 15 minutes later. Thomas calls the meeting to order. We've discussed Margaret's proposal. Before we proceed to a vote, I want to clarify the options. Option 1. We continue with Mercer as planned. Margaret takes a leave of absence, and Hendricks assumes interim leadership. Option 2. We restructure the Mercer terms as Margaret suggested, implement immediate workplace safety reviews, and maintain current leadership with increased oversight. He looks around the table. I'm calling for a vote. All in favor of option 1? 3 hands go up. Hendricks and his 2 allies. Not enough. All in favor of option 2? 4 hands, then 5. Then Thomas raises his own hand. Motion carries. Margaret retains leadership with the understanding that we're moving toward a more sustainable operational model. Meeting adjourned. Hendricks is on his feet immediately, gathering materials with barely controlled fury. I catch his eye as he passes, and the look he gives me promises this isn't over. Let him wait. I just survived a plane crash and a board coup in the same 24 hours. The board members filter out until it's just me and Thomas. He sits down in the chair Hendricks vacated. That was risky, Margaret. I know. You could have lost everything. I know. He studies me. What really happened on that plane? I met a man who showed me what it looks like to keep promises, even when it's hard. And his daughter showed me what it looks like to trust that people can change. Thomas nods slowly. Well, don't make me regret backing you. He leaves, and I'm alone with my victory and the uncomfortable awareness that I have no idea what comes next. I've restructured the company's entire philosophy in a fit of crisis-induced conscience, and now I have to figure out how to make it work. My phone buzzes. A reminder. Sophie's Science Fair, Cambridge Elementary, 3 p.m. It's 2:45. If I leave now, I might make it. I grab my jacket and briefcase and head for the door, and I don't let myself think about the symbolism of choosing a 7-year-old's science fair over post-board meeting damage control. Cambridge Elementary School smells like floor wax and children. The gymnasium has been converted into science fair headquarters, dozens of projects arranged on tables. I find Sophie's project in the 3rd row. She's explaining her hydraulic system to judges, hands moving expressively, as she describes how pressure applied to one cylinder translates to movement in another. The judges look genuinely impressed. Robert stands nearby, watching with an expression of pure pride that makes my chest ache. Sophie sees me mid-explanation, and her whole face transforms. You came. She told me you would come, but I wasn't sure because grown-ups sometimes say they'll come, but then they don't. But you actually came. I promised I'd be here, and promises matter. Robert catches my eye over Sophie's head, and something passes between us. Acknowledgement. Recognition. The judges finish their evaluation and move to the next project. Sophie immediately grabs my hand and pulls me toward her display. Okay, so this is a hydraulic system, and it shows how airplane controls work, and also construction equipment and dentist chairs. She's still explaining when Robert gently interrupts. Sophie, breathe. She takes an exaggerated breath, then grins. Do you want to see it work? Very much. She demonstrates with methodical precision. Push the syringe here. Fluid pressure transfers through the tube, raises the platform there. Simple mechanics made visible through cardboard and straws, and determination. This is extraordinary, Sophie. You should be very proud. I am proud. Daddy says being proud of your work is different from being conceited, because pride is about knowing you did something good, and conceit is about thinking you're better than other people. Your daddy is a very wise man. Robert's voice comes from behind me. I have my moments. I turn to face him. In daylight, in normal circumstances, He looks both more and less impressive than he did yesterday. The exhaustion is still there, but the crisis intensity has faded. He's just a man again, a father at his daughter's science fair. Congratulations on surviving your day. Sophie told me you had a big meeting. The fact that he knows this, that Sophie shared this detail, suggests they talked about me, that I've become enough of a presence in their narrative to warrant discussion. It was complicated, but I'm still employed. That's good. The world probably needs CEOs who remember that workers are people. The comment could be a dig, but his tone is neutral. You're not wrong. I spent the morning reading files on 400 employees I'd been treating as optimization targets. It was educational. Sophie has abandoned her project in favor of coloring, giving Robert and me a bubble of semi-privacy. He leans against the wall, and I mirror his posture. Can I ask you something? Sure. Yesterday in the cockpit, Captain Ford told me what you said to him about already having paid for the knowledge. Where did that come from? Robert is quiet for a moment. My RIO, Radar Intercept Officer, used to say it. Guy named Danny Reeves. He talked me through a carrier landing in conditions that should have killed us both. His voice has dropped into that flat tone people use when discussing processed but unresolved trauma. Danny died in an ejection seat malfunction 5 years ago. Bad sequence, didn't clear the fire. And after that, every time I flew, I felt like I was sitting in his empty seat, like I hadn't earned the right to still be alive when he wasn't. I'm sorry. Robert shrugs, but the gesture doesn't hide the weight. I left the Navy about 8 months after. Told myself it was PTSD, flashbacks, panic attacks, but really, I couldn't handle the guilt. So what changed? He looks at Sophie. She changed because I could either stay broken and let her grow up with a father who was physically present but emotionally destroyed, or I could figure out how to carry Danny's memory without letting it crush me. You chose her. I chose the possibility that maybe survival means something, that maybe I'm still here because there's work that needs doing, promises that need keeping, a kid who needs someone to show up for her science fair. The simplicity of it breaks something open in my chest. This is what purpose looks like when it's not tied to quarterly earnings. It's just showing up, keeping promises, being present. Can I ask you something now? Of course. Why did you come today? You restructured your entire day to be here. Why? I look at Sophie's bent head, her careful coloring, because she asked me to, and because I'm trying to figure out what it looks like to be a person who keeps promises instead of a CEO who optimizes everything, including her humanity. The honesty surprises me, but Robert just nods. That's a good reason. We stand in companionable silence, watching Sophie create worlds in crayon. Eventually, a woman approaches, blonde and professionally dressed. This must be Laura, the ex-wife. She sees Robert and her expression shifts. Hey, I didn't expect you to still be here. Sophie wanted me to stay for the whole fair. Laura's smile is fond and exasperated, stubborn, like her father. Her eyes shift to me. Hi, I'm Laura Sullivan, Margaret Winters. I met Robert and Sophie on a flight yesterday. The flight with the emergency landing? Sophie told me about you, said you stayed with her during the crisis. Your daughter was very brave. She helped me stay calm. Laura's expression softens. She's good at that, taking care of people even when she's scared. She gets that from her dad. The compliment is delivered easily, without bitterness. These are two people who loved each other once and still maintain respect. A judge approaches Sophie's table. Sophie's hands are clasped together so tightly her knuckles have gone pale. Sophie Sullivan, first place in the physical sciences category for students grades K through 3. Sophie's shriek of joy is loud enough to turn heads. She launches herself at Robert, who catches her with practiced ease. I knew it! Daddy, did you hear? First place! I heard, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Sophie releases her father and turns to me. I won. Did you see? You absolutely deserved it. That was brilliant work. She throws her arms around my waist. I return it with less awkwardness this time. This is the best day. You came, and Daddy stayed, and I won, and everything is perfect. The absolute certainty with which she declares this, the ability to find perfection in a school gymnasium, reminds me how far I've drifted from understanding what constitutes a good day. Laura offers to take Sophie for ice cream, which Sophie accepts with enthusiasm. As they leave, Sophie turns back to wave with both hands, her first place ribbon clutched in her fist. And then, it's just Robert and me. Thank you for coming. It meant a lot to her. It meant a lot to me, too. Robert studies my face. Can I buy you a coffee? There's a place 2 blocks from here. The invitation is casual enough to accept or decline without awkwardness, but we both know it's more than just coffee. I should go back to the office. I have approximately 17 fires burning, but I think the fires can burn a little longer. I'd like that coffee. We walk to the cafe in silence that feels comfortable. The afternoon is cool, early autumn in Boston with leaves just starting to turn. The cafe is small, unassuming, decent coffee. We take a table by the window. Robert saves me the trouble of starting, so CEO who restructures her entire company philosophy because of a plane crash and a 7-year-old. That's quite a transformation. When you say it like that, it sounds insane. Does it feel insane? It feels terrifying. Like I burned down everything I built, and I'm not sure what I'm building in its place. But it also feels more real than anything I've done in 20 years. That's probably a good sign. Is it? Because I just alienated half my board, possibly torpedoed the biggest deal of my career, and committed to changes that might bankrupt the company. Robert sips his coffee. Can I tell you something that might sound harsh? Please. Good. Because you need to hear it. The version of you that got on that plane, she was already bankrupt, not financially. But the way you treated Sophie, the way you complained about a child asking questions, the way you couldn't see past surface assumptions, that was someone operating from profound poverty. The words land like punches. Go on. You had everything except the things that actually matter. Connection, empathy, the ability to see other people as fully human instead of inconveniences. And you could have lived your whole life that way, building bigger empires and feeling emptier until you died alone with an impressive net worth and no one who actually knew you. Is there a but coming? Robert's expression softens. But something about that emergency changed you, or maybe revealed something that was always there, buried under corporate armor. And now you're standing at a crossroads trying to figure out whether to go back to profitable emptiness or risk building something that actually means something. That's a very accurate summary. So here's my question. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. I've spent my entire adult life optimizing for professional success. I don't know how to optimize for meaning. Maybe that's the point. Maybe meaning isn't something you optimize. Maybe it's something you build one promise at a time, one moment of presence at a time, one choice to see people as humans instead of resources, like staying with a scared kid instead of prioritizing your own safety, exactly like that. You've already started building, Margaret. The question is whether you're brave enough to keep going. The challenge is gentle but clear. And sitting in this cafe with decent coffee and a former fighter pilot who somehow sees me more clearly than people I've worked with for years, I make another choice. Sophie drew a museum, an aviation museum with you and her visiting it. She showed me the picture. Robert's surprise is genuine. She did? She put us both in it, along with Captain Ford and someone named Danny. Danny was my RIO, I know, but Sophie put him in the picture anyway, like he still gets to be part of the story. Robert's eyes are suddenly bright, and he looks away. That kid, she knows how to break your heart in the best way. The museum is in Pensacola. I looked it up, and I happen to know the director. I could make a call, get you a private tour, full access, make Sophie's drawing into reality. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to, because I'm trying to figure out what it looks like to be someone who keeps promises and shows up for people who matter. And somewhere in the last 36 hours, you and Sophie started mattering. The silence that follows is charged with something I don't quite know how to name. Not romance exactly, but possibility. Okay, yeah, Sophie would lose her mind. Thank you. We finish our coffee and exchange phone numbers with the understanding that this is a beginning rather than an ending. When we part ways outside the cafe, I watch him walk toward the tea station, and I feel something unfamiliar settling into my chest. Hope, maybe, or the terrifying possibility of becoming someone better. By the time I get home, my phone has 63 unread messages. I scroll through them with detached interest, marking a few as urgent for Monday, deleting the rest. The fires can wait. Instead, I pull up the contact for the Pensacola Museum director and compose a careful email. By the time I hit send, I'm smiling. Sophie's drawing is still in my jacket pocket. I take it out and prop it against the lamp on my nightstand. For the lady who stayed. Maybe that's who I'm becoming, not the CEO who optimizes everything, just someone who stays, someone who shows up, someone who keeps promises even when it's hard. It's not much of an identity, but it's a start. And sometimes starting is the bravest thing you can do.